want them to share the stage. They're the real stars. All right, we've got Pele here. All right, so opening remarks. The title is apt. These are some of the largest organizations that are represented here today. But I think what we're going to learn is that unlike the stereotype of big corporations and they don't innovate, or they do it, if they do, in a top-down CTO mandate way, innovation is happening, all over our organizations, small and large. And I think what you're going to hear today is sometimes in an incubation sort of way, sometimes in a smaller company within the larger, and sometimes just a mainline decision that we need to address legacy and bring in some new thinking. And Graph is a fantastic tool for that. So I'm really excited to introduce Pele from Volvo Car Mobility, and Bhumik from PlayStation, and Deepunk from Ford Credit, and Jonathan at the end from this little company you may have heard called JPMC. I'm not sure what they do, but I don't want to start by giving everybody a chance, just by way of introductions. Why don't you each we'll go down the panel here and tell your sort of origin story, why GraphQL showed up in your organization, and I'm going to put them a little out of chair order on the intros just because you'll see a little theme that comes up. So Bhumik from PlayStation, why don't you give us your introduction of why GraphQL for PlayStation? It's not a graphics tool, so how does that show up?
Yeah, so let me go back a few years to give you a context what it means when you're working on a new PlayStation generation. Each PlayStation comes about 6 or 7 years apart. So you kind of are building a platform that you want to make sure is sustainable to kind of realize all the future interactions and experiences that you've kind of visioned up. And such long-term vision gives you a chance to hit a reset button because you want to look at technology with a fresh pair of eyes. You want to make sure that the tech is going to be good. You want to lay out a strong foundation and pick up something that can help you leap forward.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we knew for PS5, our experiences which are unique to our gamers, we knew that they're going to grow beyond the console. And if that's the case, we want to bring the same seamless experiences to those new platforms, web, mobile, and few more.
Yep.
And ensure that while we honor the constraints of each form factor, but they are still the same in nature. This is where GraphQL comes into the picture for us. We wanted to solve some unique pain points that we saw. One of them was to ensure that our web properties are fast and secure. We created a small, lightweight authentication on GraphQL, which allowed us to add a layer of obfuscation. And that enabled us to create server-side rendered pages that could be cached, and our performances improved greatly. We picked up a retail store experiences, and with that experience, we looked to reduce our logic, the business and the pricing logic that sits on the client. We moved it closer to the cloud. It's all on Graph. And now our clients are much simpler. We have the same experience on all platforms. And our feature velocity went up. So that kind of gave us the perfect reason to bring Graph at PlayStation.
Was there resistance initially? Did it take a while to sort of convince folks to make the change?
There was.
Did this happen all overnight, I guess, is the way?
Yes.
You just gave a presentation and they said, yes, please go ahead?
Yeah, there's always some resistance, but I think that's true anywhere.
Yeah.
And so you are always looking to build incrementally. You have a North Star, but you're not setting out yourself to build that North Star, but you find milestones along the way that you can prove this tech incrementally and continuously and kind of grow from there.
That's great. Are you able to hear yourselves or each other? If there is a little lift on the monitor, that would be great. I can always hear myself but I don't know if we can hear each other. So let's go next to Pele. So tell us this story. Volvo we know as the car brand, but there's a little bit more going on here. So give us a little bit of that history and your group in Volvo Car Mobility.
Yeah. So I work for Volvo Car Mobility, and Volvo Cars has been around for building cars for like 100 years, almost, soon 100 years. So the amount of legacy inside the organization, the amount of like APIs and tech is huge. And when the company I'm working for is Volvo Car Mobility, which was started outside of Volvo, but like owned by Volvo Cars. And we started like a really fun greenfield project 5 years ago to innovate on how can a car sharing experience.
Car sharing. So this is interesting because it's like, for car makers, what do we do when people maybe don't want to buy, but they want transportation, right? So
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, Volvo knows, and like all manufacturers know, they can't sell cars like they do today forever.
Right.
So the entire purpose of our small little company was to iterate as fast as possible, to innovate on a new business model that makes car sharing a better experience than owning a car. Like you need a car for the weekend or for a few hours tonight or for a trip next week.
So not just a different, probably tech stack, but a different business model, a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
So that was set up how long ago?
So 5 years ago. So it's very interesting to hear all other stories here and all our other stories outside, because we started the company 5 years ago and we decided to go with GraphQL from the start.
Yeah.
So we've been everything we do with GraphQL and have been doing for 5 years.
That's how it is for all of you, right? It's just all GraphQL, there's no legacy, yeah? Oh, no.
Although now, since we've been 5 years, now we created our own legacy, but still. So the reason we went with GraphQL was it seemed like the best, a little bit like the PlayStation case. I mean, the best future-proof solution if we had to pick like something to build our APIs. And then for the other parts of the stack, we went with like Spring Boot and Postgres and stuff we know. So we're like a JVM company running Kotlin and so on.
That's exciting. Again, we're going to hear more about sort of what that greenfield experience is like over time. I want to bring Deepak from Ford Credit, also a company with a storied past and some legacy. You want to tell us about GraphQL at Ford Credit, Deepak?
Sure. So at Ford Credit, we do have a lot of digital experiences. Everyone had their own BFFs and whatnot. Now, these experiences, we do serve a lot of retail as well as commercial customers. We serve web, and now we are getting into the mobile space. So the product roadmap is evolving. As we know that anyone who proudly owns a Ford car, they also want an amazing experience when they interact with the company through any of the digital touchpoints, for that matter. But all of these experiences that we have, they're fueled or dependent on legacy systems that have yet to be modernized. So we had this need of creating a new API platform that could decouple the two and enable us to move faster on the digital space, modernize the entire customer experience. And secondly, we were also looking to support the different channels as they were bubbling up, right? and the new products. So web and mobile channels, different geographies, different user customer base. So GraphQL kind of became a natural choice for us to create this new API platform. The next question was, how do we do GraphQL? Do we do monoliths? Do we do Federation 1, Federation 2? And that is when we used our experience with Graph at different companies and looked at other case studies that were available. Spoke to different industry experts, and we decided to go the Apollo route.
Why don't we hold for just a minute while the helicopter goes by?
Yeah.
We are here, right
in San Diego.
It's San Diego.
Next to the naval base. So.
It's exciting. All right, please continue.
So that's where we decided to go the Apollo route away because we again as Pele also mentioned that we wanted to future-proof whatever steps we were taking. So it was a calculated move of decided to go GraphQL, but leverage the SuperGraph architecture as well.
All right, well, we're going to talk a little bit more about how you moved from theory and decision to actual practice. But I want to get Jonathan there because Chase, global, biggest bank, I think, probably, yeah?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But known, primarily in the US. Your story is a little bit about Chase UK and a fresh start. So tell us about how that happened.
So me and my team, hi, I'm Jonathan.
Yeah.
Me and my team, we are part of an org that's called ICV, and ICV stands for International Consumer Banking. And the main focus of ICV is mainly we work in our international expansion efforts. And as part of ICV, for those who don't know, 2 years ago in 2021, we launched Chase in the UK as a digital bank. And
did that use the existing sort of US code, which was probably pretty legacy?
No, it doesn't. So, and that's the nice part about that initiative is that the team at the time when we started, it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Had the opportunity to pick, what technologies we wanted to use and how we wanted to build, Chase from the ground up.
Yeah.
And a part of being being in the cloud and trying to stay on trend with the new technologies and and all that. So I'm going to reiterate a few things that they've been saying here, like why we chose GraphQL specifically. Flexibility, dev experience, multi-channels. But when you work in a large enterprise, especially, and this applies for big companies and big enterprises, but especially for a bank, when you pick a technology, it's important to pick something that not only is going to scale, but also you're not going to replace it in the next 1-2 years. It's a technology that it has to stay for quite some time.
Yeah.
And you want something that allows you to grow and support the efforts of expanding, right?
You've now also done some work in some extra innovation, sort of like a phase 2 or in second. So you've had a chance to learn from your initial greenfield to the next version. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So I think when you pick a technology, you're not gonna always get it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And you're not always get the opportunity to do it multiple times. For us, even though we are not starting over again, we right now we are working on as part of the same org ICV. We're working on a different or other initiatives as part of our international expansion.
And some of this, just in case you wonder, there's unreleased stuff that Jonathan's hinting at, so he can't really tell you exactly, but other stuff.
Yeah, but we get the opportunity to again pick new technologies or re-architect a few things, and we still like looking into the federation and graph, and we want to expand those efforts.
Yeah, that's great. I love the connections. I hinted that we would get from sort of theory and decision to practice. So let's do this. Let's pick, Deepak, your story at Ford. Like you go from a discussion about the needs of the business, mobile app, and trying to create some consistent experiences across US and Canada, and frankly, just improve the experience for customers. Now let's just say it's late last year or something. Take us through what's happened in the last, 11 months or so, and how you actually got your graph to market.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we had like lots of different experiences, and they all had their own BFF layers and lots of complexity. One of the things that I keep saying about moving over to a central API platform, which could be Graph or anything, is that you reduce your complexity by n-1. Right? You have 15 different systems, 15 BFFs. You could reduce your complexity, by 15 minus 1, 14 times easily. So the very first thing we did was define, like, let's pick up the use case. Let's pick up a use case which has a smaller blast radius. So we picked up, but we still wanted to showcase the true power and true nature of
But still
graph.
real enough to,
Exactly. So we picked up an experience that was served in both web and mobile spaces. So we could show that multi-channel view through Graph. And then we started strategizing around it, right? We started defining milestones. We started defining wins. For instance, we had to hire the team. We had to, form the team from existing people. We had to upskill those people. So, thanks to Odyssey training, I really, give that
props to
+1.
the Apollo knots that built Odyssey. It's great.
Exactly. And then, upskilling the team, gaining alignment with a lot of stakeholders. I think stakeholder mapping is something as an exercise that every large enterprise should do before we move the needle. So we define stakeholders on enterprise architecture side, security teams, infrastructure, SRE, everyone that we think would touch and feel graph, and started aligning those people to see what's important for them. And then getting into the nitty-gritties, right? Defining the schema, defining a documentation around schema governance. How do we enforce those through our CI/CD practices and so on and so forth. The outcome of all of this exercise that happened in the past, I would say 8 to 9 months, was that we were able to launch our GraphQL Federation on Apollo router in production. We started taking traffic on 2 experiences.
When was this?
This was August 31st. I remember that date.
Not
That's
long
gonna
ago.
be a milestone date in my head, all throughout
I think
my
I
life.
scheduled a prep meeting on August 31st, and
Yes.
he didn't show for some reason. I'm not sure why. So.
Yeah, because I was just busy with the launch, and then the result of launching this platform to production was we started gaining we proved a lot of concepts. Now GraphQL is not a technology which is a science project. It exists. It's there in production. There is a wide scale acceptance of how the experiences or the domains are going to connect together through the GraphQL API platform that the team have created.
I love that story. Like a lot of intention, but also some guts there, right? I mean, you were putting a lot to move an organization like yours that quickly for a big IT project is no joke. So I'm sure it all just went smoothly, right? No surprises?
Well, I would terribly lie if in case I would say I did not get sleepless nights in the past 8-9 months. There's actually a very funny story. It was, I think, a spring break. I was out on a vacation to Mexico, and I came back. I was at the airport, and I got a call from the team. And they said, you need to really join this call right now. And I was like, okay, give me 45 minutes, I'll be home. And they said, no, you need to join it now. And I could sense that urgency in the call. So I picked up, joined the meeting at the airport while I was in the immigration line. And somebody said that, we spoke to the Ford cybersecurity team. And I was like, okay. And this is when we were 3-4 months into the project, right? We were defining schemas, talking to the experiences, writing subgraphs. And somebody said, why are you guys using Apollo Studio? And we said, because we are doing GraphQL. And they said, do you know GraphQL is not a permitted technology stack at Ford?
Not approved, not allowed to use.
Not allowed to use at all. And I literally thought, am I back from vacation? Or am I still hallucinating? Or something is not right? But yeah, but then we went back, we spoke to the teams, we tried to understand their perspective. We talk about enterprises. One thing that I understand from my experience, and I think all of us do, is they stand on very strong foundation, something that they've learned over years, right? They've formed an opinion about certain things based on what they might have seen over and over again. So there are strong walls, strong foundations, but yes, we had to just work through the process, talk to the team, ask the right questions, right? Don't say, no, I want to do this. Ask them, okay, why I cannot do it? And that why, just triggers that thought process to say, okay, the team is serious. They have a literal need of moving the needle. And at the end, the same security team kind of became our guardian angel. They, handheld us. They started defining, what all things they want us to implement in our GraphQL, federation. And we have taken it all the way to production after they've certified it.
I want to make sure everyone doesn't hear this as a story about annoying security that they overruled, right? But this is a story of how you partner in the organizations. And when there is a concern, rightly so, and the security folks are on the line when things happen. And lots of things have happened, and they continue to. So when that happens, we have an opportunity to, we can complain and whine and say they're silly, or we can try to connect them and understand what am I missing? What do you know that I don't? How can they, because they don't want to stop innovation.
Absolutely.
They just want to protect the brand of the company, and that's really important. So It's a great example of how to partner. So champion, that was advanced championing right there. I want to go to, so that's a rollout story. It's pretty classic, really well executed, thoughtful, support from leadership, bottom up as well with training and everything. I want to bring Bhumik in here and PlayStation because it's such an interesting angle. You mentioned it in your intro, but the fact that the console has generations, right, means that there is a different kind of cycle time than we're just waiting around for the pain to reach to a certain point where I have to do something. So tell us about maybe generally how PlayStation thinks about introducing new technologies, because you can't just change things at the wrong cycle time and those consoles are out in the field. So how did the generational cycles play into your adoption of GraphQL?
Sure, yeah. So I think in any large organization, typically innovation would always start at the shallow end, not at the deeper end. And the generation cycles come into the picture because overall, you get this opportunity to hit a reset button. And you are now giving yourself the risk appetite to look at technologies that you wouldn't have considered, knowing that this is not going to pay out for that long time.
Yeah.
If I do anything and I know this generation is going to come to an end in 2 years, I'm not going to have so much active development on top of it. So our goal was to kind of look at, like, given this opportunity, let's make most of it. And one advice that I would give to everyone is, like, you really have to find a compelling use case. And you can find what characteristics of that use case really make a strong argument for you to move this forward. In our case, we found that the risk appetite was much higher on web and mobile devices because it wouldn't disrupt the PS5 experience right away. So the leadership and everyone was more willing to kind of bet on new technology on this. We picked up a use case of retail commerce, which...
Retail commerce, yeah. So tell us a little bit about what that means at PlayStation. Like, this is where I'm shopping for games, or...
Yes. So any digital purchase that you would do outside of console would fall within this purview. So you would either buy it on web or mobile. It could be game, your DLC, or add-ons, or anything.
And to be clear, services, if you will, represent a huge part of the growth and the importance of your company. Whereas the on-console gaming is where we started, but it's a whole community. There's merch and games and stuff. So this is not a small part of the business, right?
No, it's not, and it is one of the growing parts of the business. So, which is why this use case made more sense because it has the right visibility attached to it. And what was also good for us is that we have tens of millions of users.
Yeah.
So we picked up a size of user base that would be enough as a proving ground that if successful, we can take it to 100+ million users. Yeah. And so that use case selection was really important for us. And we started off there. But then as an engineering leader, you're not just looking to prove out the tech, but you're also looking at it from a multidimensional approach. What else can I get along with this technology? And especially in large organizations, you're always looking at there are many moving paths. So you're kind of trying to go where the buck is moving to. And what we ended up realizing is this gives us an opportunity to kind of re-envision how teams should be set up around this technology. What kind of org models would we like to have? Does this give us an opportunity to break down silos? Where would we be in terms of maintainability, community support? So there are a lot of different vectors that go along with this, not just proving out the tech, but also what can it does to do from a overall organization and culture. We are looking to create more full stack teams, and this helps us in that approach. So all of that kind of went into consideration. We delivered it. We've been in production for 3 years. It's been growing really well. We started off with about 3 teams. We are now to 15. Graph has gone beyond the retail experience, and we have many more experiences now on it.
I love that story, and it so resonates with me because when you put a graph in, it starts to redefine, or gives you the opportunity to redefine even what is the product? Because the product, when I started at Expedia, the product was the iOS travel app, the Android travel app, and the web. Those were different products. They had different product managers. There were different product management teams. But isn't hotel search the product, not the iOS app that does hotel search? And I said to my team as we were starting to roll it out, I think we're going to end up reorging around the graph. And the exec team laughed. And they were like, Dan, I know this GraphQL technology thing, you think it's pretty cool, but it's just an implementation. We didn't reorganize around REST. And I was like, okay. 2 years later, they re-announced the reorganization. And it's not because GraphQL, the query language, it's about the rethinking of where we're going to make decisions and trying to centralize things. So I think that's absolutely fascinating. And I'm going to switch up our order to follow up on this point you just made, Boerner, about teams. The graph is an amazing way, right, for front-end teams and back-end teams to collaborate, and obviously that's the best way to do schema. But when we were talking about this, I was like, should there be separate teams for the front and the back? We didn't choose to do that. So tell us about that other angle, full stack. What did you, because you had a chance, you didn't have to build these teams as separate. They didn't exist.
Sure. And it's been interesting hearing stories in the hallways from how organizations work when they like add in the graph on top of other stuff like here. And the way we grown our team since we had GraphQL from the beginning is we don't have a graph team and we don't have
a graph team. So that is interesting, right? Because the whole team is
everyone kind of like, since the only APIs we do are GraphQL, so everyone is, the GraphQL is really at the heart.
Are there job openings available in your group that anyone here wants to?
And
sorry, that just sounded like a great place to work. So.
So now like listening to some stories of adoption resistance, like yesterday, I feel spoiled because we haven't had that at all. No one has like questioned GraphQL.
Right.
Sometimes we question if it was the right choice, but when we had like dark moments. But anyhow, the way we organize teams are we try to have like autonomous teams owning like a feature vertical. It's not perfect in every team, but we try to do that. So we have like mobile devs and some front-end devs and backenders. And some of our engineers are more full stack and work everywhere, and some have their niche, but we're still in the same team. So listening to this talk about event storming yesterday was like really clever term, and then I realized, oh, that's what we do, but now I have a name for it. So if you had the chance to like start a company using GraphQL from scratch, lots of like governance things just comes really, really naturally, which is nice. But then on the backside is probably you get sloppy with like framework support, because if you don't have a graph team, like everything just evolves naturally. So our like test suites we like invest a lot in automatic testing, but since it's grown over time, just organically, it's kind of slowly grown into a beast.
There's a conservation of pain in the universe. It just moves around.
The pain is constant, I guess.
I think I would like to add to that. And I'm like, really happy that I think Jonathan Pele is, giving us a view from the future where, GraphQL just becomes, BAU.
Right.
So I would love to, reach that stage someday. But like, at enterprises where it's still kind of considered like a remote technology or like a new technology. So the kind of team that we formed was kind of on similar lines that, get few people from the experience, get few people who have worked on the back end, make them sit together, because Graph OS altogether is like an ecosystem. We can not just build it on the back end side and expect the benefits are going to trickle, to the front ends. You need to know, like, the configurations on the client side to get the true benefits of the back end, and that's where it all comes together. That we have this team who now owns the entire customer experience, not just front ends or back ends,
right?
And everything that's related to it. So that's a similar approach that we have taken at Ford Credit too.
And was your team constructed primarily of folks that were already at Ford Credit, or was it a new hiring effort? 95%
of the team was existing Ford Credit.
And they didn't work in that way of work.
They did not work in that way. They were, experienced teams just working on, the front ends, and the back end teams taking care of the back ends, and so on. And so forth.
Were they excited? Did that transition, was that a positive one, or did you have resistance?
It was actually exciting because there is, like, as I said, right, the Graph OS is a whole ecosystem. You need to, the team was excited to build this as an ecosystem or as a platform, because now the front end, the experienced engineers, they were actually building reference applications with Apollo client library and educating everyone else on other experienced teams to say, this is how you get the true benefit of a Graph API. Right, so it was kind of exciting because everybody was bringing tons of value to this whole ecosystem or platform as such.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges when you start working with a new technology, and when you have a separation between backend and frontend, and we are not everyone as lucky as Pele to have that, not to have that problem.
Exactly.
But
It's not that perfect.
nothing is perfect. But I like what a part of the story that Deepak was telling about when you run into an issue, you work with the team. You don't go against the team. And I think with the Graph, you have to go through that process, right? You have to go to bring those words together at some point and work together. So you have one way of centralizing everything, or have a team full stack, or you can have like backend, clear separation. But there's something that you need to have, the processes, the governance, the stewardship, that brings those teams together, right?
That's right.
And working with teams, this is not a one team effort. This is not a one person effort. This is a collaborative effort.
Well, and it's also not a one and done. It's like it's just like the modernization efforts that we're all doing. Our tech stacks are never going to end. I have bad news for you. You're going to be modernizing your entire career. Get good at it. But also the governance changes, right? What you needed to do in that first year is going to change, Defunct, in the second and third year. And I know that from talking to Pele, you've changed already, over a 5-year journey. And I wonder if Boom, if you could come in and anything you'd add on sort of what's changed from your very first GraphQL to sort of where things are now?
Sure, yeah, and I think we've come a long way now. So when we started, our goal was to kind of bring this technology in a way which is coherent, but at the same time we can incrementally displace the old legacy system.
Yeah.
So we started off with one Graph team actually that was responsible for owning the platform, setting up the initial schema, writing the resolvers, and kind of laying out a foundation. But we knew that's not going to be scalable. It's not going to be the way we would like to work for even next year or two. Yeah. So the way we went about this is like, once we have a foundation, now let's invite everyone else. We followed a lot of open source principles actually, how the largest open source libraries have been built over a period of time. So we followed those principles. We tried to imbibe them in our processes and open ourselves for a multi-team contribution model. So we kind of invited a lot of front-end engineering teams that were primarily championing Graph in their own respective Scrum teams. And they kind of became our collaborators. So they would write most of the schema. But this was done in collaboration with the Graph team. So now the governance model then kind of changed, where the Graph team is still responsible for the health of the platform. It looks at the performance of the subgraphs. We instituted something called as feature impact analysis, where any new team which is looking to adopt Graph, they would come and present their use case, try to understand what their demands or asks are from Graph, and then we would guide them so that they don't spend time in learning some of the lessons that we've learned already, and we can kind of help them before they even get to development.
I love that point. There is a key moment when a new team is preparing to join the Supergraph, and it's not PR time. When
it's much earlier.
It's way earlier. Because then you get an opportunity to really discuss for what purpose, what are you trying to accomplish? Are there pieces of this that we can connect in from a technical entity, but also just like you say, we thought that too a year or two ago, but we learned kind of the hard way.
Right. And then we continue with it. So we are there for the schema reviews. The Graph team is one of the mandatory approvers for all the PRs. And it is a very hand-holding approach. And you can't scale beyond a particular point. And that's where the federation really came in to our rescue, because we now feel more confident that there are certain collaborators who've been working on this for quite some time.
Right.
And we would like to pass the baton and make them more their own domain owners, and they can own their own subgraphs. Whereas the team will now take a more central role to, or overall stewardship of the platform, and kind of lay out what's the path in front of us, what's next 2 or 3 years look like for us.
I like that. I like that point that it's an ongoing change, and I like that it's you can start with some some vision and processes, but as your team grow, as the graph scales,
Right.
you kind of start adapting to those. And there's something that we talk about is it's not the same when you start a project from the ground up, when you start something that is already started and you're migrating to the graph. But even when you start over and you've been through the process, the teams change.
That's right.
And even the second time that you implement a model, it also can be to go through a different iteration and decentralize. The more you learn about that governance, what I say is that you need to have something in place when you start.
Yes.
That at least gets you going in that processes, and then you iterate over that.
Yeah, these things change over time. The approach you use changes over time, and even the company priorities can change over time. So let's play a game and pretend that time has traveled, and let's say it's 2 or 3 years from now. It's our first international summit in, let's say it's in Cabo. I think that sounds like a perfect place to have a summit.
Beautiful.
Exactly. And I want to ask each of you to dream with us about what you really want to be true, or you dream to be true, and that you're going to try to bring about at your organizations. You're going to look back on stage 3 years from now, or say, what's your dream for where your graph goes at your organization, or where this technology goes? So let's just go down the panel here, and Pele, start with you.
Yeah, I've been a GraphQL fan for 5 years. Love GraphQL. And part of it is because it's like new and unsolved problems. But I kind of wish that when we're there, that GraphQL is boring. Boring, and federation is like super easy to explain to a new joiner. It's like you can do it in like 30 seconds in the elevator, they get it.
And you're focused on the solutions that enables, not the actual...
And there are no longer talks about how to figure out observability. It's more like, there's a ton of books, this is how you do it. I kind of wish for that. So I want to help support that as well.
I love that. I love that thought.
Yeah, I would say I would like to see graph being more thought as a standard way of building it. I still see a lot of times we kind of type box ourselves to like client and server and REST. So I would like to see it evolve more as a standard way of just how you evangelize or kind of envision building an experience. And one personal wish that I have is I would like to see more graph as a service. So not just when you're working within your enterprise, but if you're integrating with any third-party solution. Rather than consuming an API, they might also give you a graph to consume. So seeing graph as a service.
Graph, absolutely, and we see that pattern. What would you add to that?
I think, so same thing as what Pele said, right? Like I think a few years down the line, I would say GraphQL should become like a de facto choice for any of the API platforms. That's one. Next would be, if we now want to connect the different, like we are talking about, implementing GraphQL and within the companies. How do we start connecting all the different companies in, like, let's say a particular, domain? Which means, standardization across the enterprises, not just one enterprise, which could be, like for instance, for REST, we have open banking standards, open API standards. Are we going to get open graph standards in future? That could be a name. And then once we, reach that stage, data is the key. Companies are going to, add that as a revenue stream in future.
Talking about monetizing.
Exactly.
Yes.
So what would be the monetization strategy around graph? At the field level, at the operations level, and things like that. So, or at the query level. But at the query level, how do you do it? So there are like lots of still challenges which are open. And if in case I have to think about 3 years down the line, I would as well as said, would like to contribute to solving those challenges and build that out in the open source world with the rest of the companies for sure.
That's excellent.
If I had to add something, I would say that I would like to see the graph to be treated as a first-class citizen and not as a second tier.
Yeah.
And also having people with a graph mindset and not more as a domain-driven mindset.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure that we understand the differences in how when you approach a graph, what mindset you are approaching it with. And also, one last thing I would say is I would like to see the graph as a tech that is not driven by one side of the one team, like the front or the back. It's like it's a standard that this is how you, for these problems, this is how you how you solve them, and not coming from one side of the aisle. Graph is not for every problem, so we need to make sure that
Right.
But when it is, because in a lot of cases it is the right solution, just to be a more agreement on both sides.
Do you see Chase US on the graph in 3 years?
If we do things right, we as a company we do share our learnings.
Yeah.
So I would love to see more adoptions throughout the company, because I think for those use cases, like I said, that make sense.
Yeah.
It's the right choice.
I've loved our conversation. All the work you guys are doing are fantastic. I just want to thank the audience for being here. How about a round of applause for our panel? If there's like maybe 1.5 questions, if anybody has a question for one of the panelists, I think there are some mics that we could hand around. There's one back there. So I want to give you a chance to ask a question if you have one. Otherwise, we will get you to lunch. I think the pre-lunch, it's like, eat. All right, thank you all. It was great to see you. Hope you have a great finish to the summit, and we'll see you in 3 years in Cabo. You coming?